Hey, everybody, welcome. I'm Natalie, and this is Scientology Life After a Cult. I get to chat with someone today. I'm very excited about this interview. I'm glad that you're all here. Hello to everybody in the live chat. As we go along, if you have questions, put question in front of your question, and I can better track those, or comment if you want to read it or want me to read it or share it with our guests. That'd be fabulous. Thank you to the moderators for being here helping out, all the fabulous channel members, and everybody who showed up today in the live chat. I appreciate you. Today, I'm going to interview Julie McKernan. She grew up in Scientology. She's got a very interesting story because often I think we hear from people who are former Sea Org members or staff members, and hers is a story of being a public Scientologist, but working with the Sea Org in a couple of different ways, which is part of what I think makes her story so interesting. Hey, Cece, I see you there. Karen, aloha. Welcome, welcome. Jolie says, I feel like deja vu from this morning. I know I didn't even change. I gotta be honest with you guys. I slept in these clothes too. I got ready from here up. I slapped on some lipstick, a little bit of eyebrows, a hat, a little bit of face powder, and called it a day. Okay, so without further ado, I would like you all to meet Julie. Welcome, Julie.
Hi, everyone.
So
Thank you
great.
for me, Natalie. It's very nice to have you.
I'm so glad that you're doing this. We've been wanting to connect for a while.
Yes.
And you were born into Scientology, and then, of course, you recently, relatively speaking, left Scientology, correct?
Yes. Just over 3 years ago.
Okay. So when you were born into Scientology, tell me where you were and what your parents were doing.
My parents were on staff in Boston, and I was born in 1969. Okay, I just aged myself. But they were on staff in Boston, and they, shortly after I was born, about 6 months after I was born, they actually they left staff. They routed out or did the processes needed to not be on staff anymore. Mm-hmm. And we traveled around, and they were kind of off lines for quite a while where they weren't doing Scientology, but it was very, very much a part of our household and how we were raised. Mm-hmm. When I say we, I mean, I have 2 younger brothers. So it was, a big part of our upbringing. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. What age did you start would you consider that you started your Scientology indoctrination?
That's a tricky question because the indoctrination started very early.
Yeah.
But you mean, at home. But
yeah, so
the real
courses or any Scientology auditing.
12 and a half.
Okay. And like you're saying, kind of to your point, that's the thing about being raised in Scientology is applied to you. You're doing Scientology contact assist and a bunch of different things that apply in a Scientology family household.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start doing your Scientology training and courses, at some point you end up in Florida, in Clearwater, as a teenager, right?
Yes, but I have to mention that prior to that, at 12 and a half, I went to the Delphi school in Oregon. And I was there for 4 years, 3.5.
Tell me about that. What was that like?
Well, that's where I really got indoctrinated. I had the basics, quote unquote, basics down from my home life, but I traveled all the way from the East Coast to Oregon to go to school, and you lived there.
Yeah, it's boarding school. Liz Gale went to Delphi as well.
I know, right. So I lived there, and only half the students were Scientologists. The other half, it varies from year to year, were totally not. But it was an international school, so there's folks from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
But they also had a small trailer that was set up as a mission on their property.
Wow, they set up a Scientology mission on the property at
Delphi.
The property.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So that's where I learned how to audit Dianetics. Mm-hmm. I think I was well, I was 13 by then.
So would the kids that were Scientologists then go to regular Delphi school and then go to the trailer and do Scientology?
Yeah. Yes.
Wow.
And then also at that time, and this is 81,
Hmm.
there used to be a mission that was run by a fellow by the name of Martin Samuel. That was an actual house
Hmm.
off property. That's where I did my first communications course. But in addition to that, there was that trailer, and that's where I studied Dianetics auditing and actually audited fellow students at that time.
Yeah. It's interesting to learn that there were so many non-Scientology students at Delphi. That's something I guess
Sure.
I've not really talked to anybody about before.
Mhm.
Would they say anything about Scientology or would it come up? I mean, what was that like to have a mix of so many Scientology kids and kids who weren't in
Right.
Scientology, but they're using L1 Hubbard study technology?
Yeah, it was, eh, as a kid, it was a weird um, feeling because I felt like a insider outsider at the same time. I will say that one of the key things that locked me into wanting to know more about Scientology
Mhm,
was a conversation I had in a hallway with three other girls, my
mhm,
friends, right? And there was an upset happening. Somebody was mad at somebody else, and I was there, and I'm always the mediator. And I said, what's going on? And one gal looked at me and said, "Oh, I just have a giant ARC break." And that means a break in affinity reality communication. For those that don't know, I know it's a Scientology term for an upset.
mhm.
And I said, "What do you mean ARC break?" And they said, "I thought you were a Scientologist." And I just went, "Oh, I guess I'm not, oh, like I don't know enough." And it spurned me on, pardon me, it spurned me on to want to become a very knowledgeable Scientologist.
To fit in because being in the
Exactly.
school with Scientologists.
That's exactly right. And so therefore, I I guess my pa- I guess my parents paid for it at the time, to do the Dianetics auditing course in the trailer, and then I audited those girls, the same girls that got on my case about not being a real Scientologist.
How did that go?
I'll show you. Oh, it was interesting. It was interesting, and at the time, of course, I felt like I was doing them good,
Yeah, yeah,
like I was helping them.
exactly.
Um,
And you were at Delphi until you were about 16, you said?
yeah, I graduated when I was 16 in 1986.
Oh, okay. So you graduated.
Yes,
So at that point, you're 16, and
yes.
what happens from there once you graduate from Delphi?
Okay, so while I was at Delphi, my parents split, and
Mm,
my father moved back to Los Angeles. I shouldn't say back because it's not where we were from,
yeah,
really, but he moved to Los Angeles. My mother stayed on the East Coast, and he became very much heavily more involved in
yeah.
Scientology. He kind of like reconnected with some old friends and and my brothers were there with him. And so we all ended up living at Celebrity Center International
Mhm.
temporarily, but it was for a good year and a half, I'd say.
Yeah. Wait, all of you together?
Yes, my dad, my brothers, and myself.
Okay. And at the Manor Hotel Celebrity Center, that was at a time when it was before the renovation
Yes.
and Scientologists could actually live there. I
Hmm.
was there a year after you
Hmm.
living there.
Hmm.
And also a year after that, or at that same time, is when Lisa Marie Presley was also living there.
Oh, sure. I met up with her plenty of times.
And she was a teenager then. So what was the scene like amongst the teens at the time when you were there? You got Lisa Marie Presley running around, you're running around. What kind of did you all get into any shenanigans?
I mean, here's how it was for me. I wouldn't define shenanigans, but here's how it was for me. I worked at Mad Hatter Studios. I took the bus because I didn't have a driver's license yet. So I took the bus to Mad Hatter Studios, which at the time was owned by Chick Corea. And so I worked with Scientologists during the day. And then I would come back to Celebrity Center and go on course until 10:30 at night.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the deal that I had with my father, was if you're not on course, you're out. That was his mentality at the time.
Wow. And you guys, and your whole family was living there at the Manor Hotel. What kind of a
Yeah.
room did you have?
We lived on the 7th floor, and my dad's room had a balcony,
Oh,
like
nice.
a nice balcony. I mean, the rooms were shabby at the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Was it a really big balcony?
Yeah, pretty big.
I think that's now the presidential suite.
I think you're correct.
Yeah.
But there was a connecting bathroom, and I had the other little small room connected to it, and that was my room.
Yeah.
So that's where I lived.
Yeah. So you had to be on
And my
course.
brothers had bunk beds next to the kitchen.
Yeah.
It's true.
So you're there and you're working with Scientologist and you're on
Yes.
course because you have to be.
Yes.
And you've graduated from high school. How do you avoid being recruited by the Sea Org? You graduated from high school, you're 16. I mean, you're prime pickings and you're in the belly of the beast. How do you avoid that?
Very good question. I had a bullseye on the back and front of me.
Yeah.
Because Delphi grad, parents are Scientologists, living at Celebrity Center. Yeah, I was recruited like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
It got to the point, and I can't be certain on this one. I don't know if it was Tommy Davis or that came later, or Gavin Potter, because I know I spoke with him several times. But I just had this knowledge. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but I had this knowingness that if I join the Sea Org, I'm going to end up leaving the Sea Org. I just knew it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I saw so many unhappy people around me.
Who were Sea Org members?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And so somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew there's something up here that is not conducive to happiness in life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I said, no, I'm not going to, because I'm not a quitter. Once I dive into something, I don't want to quit.
Yeah.
And so I knew somehow that I'm going to end up quitting. So I'm not going to join.
Yeah.
At one point, it was pretty funny. We were sitting down at the cafe at Celebrity Center, the little cafe that they have there. And it was late at night. And the recruiters came up to me, Sea Org members, and started talking to me again. They talk to me all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, let me turn the tables on you. Let me recruit you. And they're like, what? And I said, yeah, let me give this a shot and see how I do. And I laid out the whole diatribe of all the right reasons for the greatest good and blah, 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 and this and that. And the guy says, oh my gosh, you're awesome. Like, why are you not a recruiter? You could have been a recruiter. I said, I know. It's because I don't want to join. And that is technically a disqualification. If you do not want to be there, that is technically a disqualification.
Yeah.
And I pointed that out to him, and he left.
Yeah.
I was recruited many, many times.
Yeah, that is a feat. And for people who are watching, I mean, you are such like a prime candidate at that age and stuff. Like that is a feat to overcome. What did you do at Mad Hatter Studio? So you're 16, you're graduated from high school, but you're still a minor. Did you work full time? What were the hours like?
Oh, yeah, it was full time. I would call it like a girl Friday. Like I made the coffee and then I'd go up to the studio and, clean up around here and there and get to know the sound engineers or greet the guests that are coming in or vacuum the floor. I mean, I was doing everything. Yeah. I was just taking care of the place, but that was full time.
Yeah.
And then it was course at night. And that was things like, I started to get more advanced courses, a PTSSP course. I don't mean to get too technical, but advanced courses, or at least introductory advanced courses.
Sure. And you were saying when you were there, you ran into Lisa Marie Presley as
Oh
well?
yeah. Oh yeah, sure. I mean, we had mutual friends. We weren't like tight, but we would hang out in the hallway on break, and we talked quite a few times. We had a lot of mutual friends. I found her to be, how would I say it? She was so aloof,
Yeah.
a little bit aloof, but she was actually very, very nice. I mean, she was
Mhm.
super sweet. There was, at the time, there was a couple of people that were on course with us, and she goes, "Oh, stay away from them." I'm like, "Why?" And she's like, "Just trust me."
Yeah.
She was super smart, but also But how can you blame her, coming from her family life
Mhm.
and her, persona? She had no choice but to be a little bit on the secretive side. But once you got to know her, she was super, super sweet.
Mhm.
It really, really made me sad when she passed.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
So you're working there, you're 16. At what point do you end up going to Clearwater to Flag?
Hmm. Yeah. So, let's see, late 16, early 17. I think it was early 17
Mhm.
years old that um, I kind of got an ultimatum of sorts. My dad says, "Okay, you're going to do this or you're out." And what this was working at Flag for a group called CIPRO, which is the Scientology International Properties Restoration Organization. So, and it was a work study program. And I wasn't doing anything bad. I wasn't
Mhm.
getting involved in anything bad. It was just kind of
Yeah.
like, you need to move on.
Yeah.
And so I went to Flag. I flew to Flag, and I lived at the Hacienda Gardens
Mhm.
with other Sea Org members. There was I think it was like 10 or 12 of us in a room, bunk beds, in like a small apartment at the Hacienda Gardens. And
With non-Sea Org and Sea Org members.
well, I was the only non-Sea Org in that room.
Okay.
There were lots of other non-Sea Org members, uh, that were working on the building
Mhm.
Flag.
Yeah, to renovate Flag. Was that when they were
Yeah.
doing Superpower, or did that come later?
No, that was later. We were working on the cabanas.
Oh, yes. I got to stay in the cabanas a couple times. I did like it.
Nice. You probably stayed in one of my rooms.
I bet. So you're doing the renovations.
Yeah.
You're still underage, though. Are you,
Oh,
like, I mean, using power? Like, what were the rules on?
oh gosh. Oh, forget it. Forget it. Like, I was on what they call I did learn some of the trades, and I ended up doing construction work for years and years
Mhm.
afterwards. Um, but I was on 4-foot stilts, which are these things you strap onto your leg.
Mhm.
And I think it's 13 stories, or is that the HGB?
I think,
No, Flag is I don't know.
yeah,
I
I
can't
don't
remember, because I worked on the HGB for a year as well
remember the
after.
same thing with Cipro.
Yeah,
Yeah. So when you're there, you're doing
but it's Flag,
actual
so I'm
construction.
literally on stilts walking down the stairwell with a sandblaster, or I'm on stilts banging a ram set to hang hi-hat, to hang sheetrock in the ceilings of the cabanas. I did slice my leg open at one point with a piece of metal, and you know, looking back on it, I still have the scar to prove it. Not a
Mhm.
big deal, but it's there. I was ordered to go to the medical liaison officer, and they said, "Oh, it'll be fine." No, it wasn't fine.
Yeah.
One of the non Sea Org members that were working on the crew took me to the hospital to get
Wow.
stitches, because they didn't want to take care of it. And we pulled all-nighters all the time.
Wow. And were there other people that were also miners that were working on this like active construction site
Absolutely.
for
Totally.
Scientology?
Yes. Quite a few. I mean, if I had to put a number to it that I was aware of. Oh, and okay, I'd say about, let's see, minors, 20.
Yeah. And what would you get? So you go out there, you're working full time
Oh,
plus
yeah. Yeah.
doing manual labor, construction. Are you getting room and board and you're being paid by Scientology? How is this working?
When I was at Flag, the only exchange was room and board. You got fed and a place to sleep. No pay.
So you do manual
Except
labor full time for Scientology.
Mhm.
It's basically like the Sea Org. You
Yeah.
get room and board, and you weren't even getting $50 a week. I mean, you were
No.
just
No.
room and board and working all that time. I remember hearing about Cipro. And even back then, I wondered, like, how do, people do that? Like, how do you don't have any money? Like, how did you do your laundry or get snacks or anything like that?
Um, I I saved some money from Mad Hatter, and I
Yeah.
brought it with me, like
Right.
quarters and like literally for the washing machines and stuff like that.
Yeah, because we
Or
know Scientology makes us pay for our own laundry all the time, even in the Sea Org,
yeah,
even
that's
there in your
right.
situation. Those
That's right.
people cannot fork over for some laundry detergent and some washers and dryers for their own people who are working all the time. You gotta put in the coins,
That's
literally
right.
making money off their own people like that.
That's right. So, and the only other exchange that I received was being on course. So I was able to be on course in the nighttime. Of course, by then I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not really ready to go sit down and study, but I had to because that's part of the program.
Mhm.
And it was very interesting, kind of like an anecdote here. When you're, I was doing the Hubbard Qualified Scientologist course,
Mhm.
and it kind of covers some lower level basic style auditing, upper indoctrination, TRs, training routines. Sorry to get so technical, but you know what I'm talking about. But so here I am being paired up with these non Scientologists, fellow construction workers, and
Mhm.
I'm supposed to audit them. You know, a guy from Milwaukee and a French Canadian dude. And when you're drilling on these training routines, some of the upper training routines, some of the drills incorporate things like, oh, what if a person wants to run away
Yeah.
or, get mad at you? What do you do? And you drill that. And I've already done that course. It actually happened at Flag to me with one dude in particular who got really, really mad at me.
This was
And
during a Scientology auditing session,
mhm,
and you were a teenager. Was he also a
alone.
teenager?
Hmm?
Was he a teenager as well?
No, no. He was like 30 years old.
So you're in an auditing room with him?
Yeah, by myself.
Yeah. Do you remember what you were auditing?
Look at that wall. Walk
Okay.
over that wall.
So,
Thank
like,
you. Turn around.
objective processes, and in the
Exactly.
process, so tell us what happened.
Well, again, I'm 5'5". He's like 6'2",
Mhm.
and he's 30 years old. I'm 17 or 16, 17. And I said, "Oh, here, here's what we're gonna do," and kind of like, and he got so mad he raised a fist after I only four commands, like back
Yeah.
and forth. And he raised a fist. He says, "If you tell me to do that again, I'm gonna frickin' slug you." And I said, "Okay, I'm sorry about that. Thank you. Look at that wall."
Yeah.
And nothing happened physically,
Yeah.
but it it and it's just so odd to me how it didn't dawn on me all the way along the line how this stuff doesn't actually work.
Mhm.
because in Scientology, as you know, the way out is the way through. So that means it's working because they're getting mad or they're reacting. So you must be doing it right.
Yeah.
That's what my thinking was at the time. But this poor guy, he was exhausted too. He spent all day, tiling.
Yeah.
And
I know he has to walk back and forth between walls, and those
right.
are I think now they call it the survival rundown, and it's basically the objective
Yeah,
process.
it's similar. The survival rundown is a bunch of different objective auditing
Okay.
processes all glommed together, but it's very similar. Yes, it's that
And you
command,
tell him to
move
walk.
around kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Walk over to that wall. Thank you,
Yeah,
touch that
touch
wall.
that
Turn
wall,
around.
turn
Look at
around.
that wall. Walk over.
Could
It
you
would
imagine?
it would make anyone wanna slug somebody.
Yeah, right. I didn't blame him. I was kind of like, "Do you think I want to keep telling you to do this? Well,
Yeah.
come on, have your cognition already."
Yeah. So he kinda, got all worked up and raised his fist,
Yes.
but then he calmed down. You didn't have to actually physically manhandle him?
Yeah, a couple of times. Just grab him on the wrist.
And when would you have to do that, and why?
When he would not move
Mhm. Yeah,
or
'cause you
obey my command, physically make the command occur.
Mhm.
When I say command, even just the word command bugs me
Yeah,
because it's so gross. Like,
yeah.
I don't want to command anybody unless I'm in a
Mhm.
war zone. But so when he would not move and he was objecting to moving, I would have to grab his arm and grab his wrist and make him move across the floor.
Mhm.
And if he didn't want to touch the wall, I would grab his hand and smack it on the wall.
Just like we were trained to do in
Yeah,
practice and
exactly.
drilling.
That's right. That's right.
Mhm.
So I did do that. But your question was why? And I guess the reason why is because
Yeah,
that's what I was trained to do.
yeah, exactly. So you're
Think,
doing that.
thinking that it's going to create some kind of revelation for this person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some kind of big realization that you
Yeah.
have so that you can stop doing it. So you're doing all of this work, you're doing manual labor, you're staying up all night sometimes, you're not getting paid
Yeah.
any money, you're not
No,
even getting proper medical care when you
no,
slice your leg open with something
no.
metal. I mean, there's so many things that could have gone wrong. It's a non-Scientologist or a non-Sea Org person who took you to the hospital so you could get medical
Yeah,
treatment.
because he felt bad for me. He was like, "Okay, they're not looking after your health. I'll take you to the hospital."
Yeah. How long were you there and where did you go from when you were done with that project?
I was only there for a little over 3 months. I did learn a lot, and then from there, I moved back to Los Angeles, um, and I continued working construction with actual Scientologists
Yeah.
because I now and also I continued at the Hollywood Guarantee Building, which was another year-long project.
So you went from Clearwater back to Los Angeles to the Hollywood
Mhm,
Guarantee Building and
mhm,
did the same thing under
mhm.
this organization. Do you by chance remember when they did away with Cipro? Because at some point they stopped.
Yeah,
They stopped having Scientologists,
right,
basically what you were doing. And
right.
can't recall why they stopped. It had to have been something scandalous.
Well, I went probably, but I went from the Hollywood Guarantee Building for a year. Then I worked back again on the renovations of Celebrity Center International. So that would bring me to about 89,
Mhm.
90 ish. And something did occur because all of a sudden that program was totally gone.
It was just gone.
Yeah.
If anybody's watching this, whether you're in the live chat or you're on the replay and you have information about that program that was run, Cipro, do you remember what that stood for?
Scientology International Properties Restoration Organization.
Yeah, shoot me an email. I would like to hear more about that. Natalie at lifeafteraccult.com. It's not something that we've talked a lot about at this channel. I remember when it happened, but I'm curious because the way it so suddenly stopped,
Yeah, it was like,
something had to have happened for
I'm
that to
sure.
happen.
I'm sure.
That stopped then while you were at the Hollywood Guarantee Building on Hollywood Boulevard doing that building.
Mhm.
That ended, and where'd you go from there? Now, this whole time, I'm thinking about this too, like, you were at boarding school from the age of 12, so you really were not living really hardly at all with your parents,
No,
and your parents were not in the Sea Organization,
no.
which I think is it says a lot because we hear so many stories of people who have parents in the Sea Org and what ends up happening to the kids, and here are 2 people who are public Scientologists. You were a public Scientologist, never in the Sea Org, yet had all of these experiences,
Mhm.
similar at times to people in the Sea Org.
Yeah.
So, at what point then you're done doing construction? Where do you go from there?
Okay. So I did the construction work, and then I honed in on electrical because I was good at it and I
Yeah.
liked it. And I worked a little bit for a couple of Scientology general contractors as an electrician in my teens.
Mhm.
Then I also volunteered my time to build a sauna for Narconon in the Valley.
To build a sauna.
Yes, yes.
Wow. But Scientology is sure good at getting people to do things for free.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, so on my off time, I'd go build a sauna for no pay.
Mhm.
And then I kind of lucked out and I ended up rewiring a house with a crew. I was in charge. I was 18 at the time, almost 19.
Did you have any type of did you need any type of licensing or especially if you're in charge? That sounds like a contractor.
Well, I worked under the GC, the general contractor's license.
Mhm.
I did have the know-how. I did know what I was doing, but I had no training, like official paperwork.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
had plenty of training, but
Yeah, you
no.
learned everything on the job, which
Yeah,
again is the way even in the
yeah,
Sea Org, all the jobs that we did and learned, it was all on the job training.
exactly, exactly. So that's how I learned. But I had done, several years of it, having worked on the Hollywood Guarantee Building. That's 13 stories, and I was in charge of every single one of those breaker boxes. I
Mhm.
went up and down that stairwell thousands of times. I know that place well. I built where they hold OSA now. I know those offices well. I put the can lights in the ceiling myself.
Mhm,
Like,
mhm.
I really do know that I mean, maybe things have changed by now, but, I know that building very well.
Yeah. At one point, you end up at Scientology's confidential to everybody in
Yeah,
Scientology, but anybody with Google Maps knows where it is.
yeah,
Scientology's confidential international management base. You
yes.
get cleared to go as a public person,
Mhm.
which is unusual. There aren't many
Very
people,
rare, especially at that time.
yeah, that did that. I mean, that alone, I mean, oh my gosh, we gotta hear about that experience. Kay Thompson says, "And Kay, thank you for the super sticker. Good afternoon, Natalie and Julie. Thank you for this chat. I'm in NI." What is NI? "But try to learn as much as I can in support of those who have escaped Scientology." Oh, never in. I'm a never in.
Oh, oh,
Thank
oh,
you, Kay. That's very kind of you. Thank you so much
okay.
for being here. So you end up tell me about that process. Like, how did you get tapped to go to the base?
Okay. So, while I was back in Los Angeles and, doing this electrical work, I also started the St. Hills Special Briefing course at a young age.
Yeah. Which is
And
like for
it's
people
like
never in Scientology, it's like, oh my gosh, like you'd like going and getting like a master's degree,
yeah,
I think, but in Scientology doing Scientology auditor training, it's extensive.
trust me, it really is.
And you finished it?
Yes, I graduated in 1993
Wow.
from the St. Hills Special Briefing course. I did not do the internship. Um, so, but in the midst of, so towards the end of the briefing course, I decided to go do some upper level auditing.
Mhm.
which are called the operating thetan levels. So I went across the street to Advanced Organization Los Angeles
Mhm.
and worked my way up through OT4.
Mhm.
Then I went
What
back and
what
graduated.
what was your I gotta ask you because people love to know this. What was your reaction to learning about Xenu and body thetans in the course room? When you read the material.
Oh gosh, it's such, everybody has their own like take on it. But I will say, for me, I was so um like auditor, because I'm a more tech person.
Yeah,
Like
you're a very trained auditor.
yeah, yeah. So I was like, all right, give me the book, and then you have to plug in the book and lock the door, and there's a person standing right there, and you open the book, and I recognize Hubbard's writings. I
Mhm.
can tell his handwriting, and I'm reading along, and I don't even think there was anybody else in the course room.
Mhm.
I think it was just me. But the supervisor is standing literally in front of the door, and it's locked. And I'm reading along, and I go, "What? Wait. What? Let me look at this closer. What did I think?" Here's how it goes, and it's probably a prime example of cognitive dissonance,
Mhm.
is because I thought, this is crazy. But because it comes from Hubbard, it has to be true.
Yes.
And then as the auditor side of me kicked in and said, "Oh, well, if it reads, it reads. Then if on the meter, on the e-meter,
Mhm.
then it's valid."
It's a
So
real thing. The e-meter said that you have a body thetan on your arm, so surely it must be.
right. But looking back on it now, at the time I was like, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
And okay, but I didn't even see the point of telling, like, are you telling me that I'm surrounded by disembodied spiritual beings, that they're stuck to me and around me? I'm like, "Mm." I never actually bought it.
Mhm.
I only bought what the meter said,
Yeah.
if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah, no, I get what you're saying,
Because
and it
all I
makes
wanted to
sense.
do was get through it. I
Yeah,
wanted to get through that so that I could get to the next level.
yeah.
But then when I learned that the next level is more of the same, I'm like, no,
Mhm.
sign me up, because I'm not doing that.
Yeah. I think that's a big part of why I never got as far as I did, the same as you, through operating Thetan level 4 and was like, "Wait,
There's more of this.
there's more? I thought I got through it." And
Yeah,
so much of
well, the EP
Scientology.
of OT3 is supposed to be that there's no more.
Mhm.
That's
That's right.
what you think.
Yeah, the whole goal, you're convinced that you have no more body thetans and you
Right,
believe that it's that way, and you even
right.
attest to it, believing that. It's such a bait and switch.
Yeah, it's
It really
terrible.
is. Yeah.
So when I got on to 4, I was like, "Ugh, more? Wait, that just unvalidated everything I thought I had accomplished."
Mhm. Yeah.
And then when I started realizing I've never, done OT6 or 7, but when I started, my stepmother, my father, he was an OT8. I started realizing that these guys are spending hours, or at least minutes by minutes, but hours and hours on end.
Mhm.
I'm thinking, oh, it's more of that.
Yeah.
It has to be more of that. And I'm not doing more of that,
Yeah.
because it never made my life better.
Yeah.
It didn't make my life better.
Now, there was a lot of the attitude, it was my attitude now that I've spoken to many people who've left Scientology since doing the operating Thetan levels, for a lot of them, it was, I just needed to get through it. I just wanted to
Yeah,
get through it. It was something we endured. The big win was not having to do it anymore. Like, that was the goal. Like,
right.
"Hey, I don't need to do this anymore." It's like hitting yourself in the face.
Mhm.
You finally get permission to stop.
Right.
And then you're
Yeah.
so
And
relieved.
that and when you think about it, I mean, how ridiculous is that? That is your goal, is
Yeah.
to just stop. doing it.
Just to make it stop, make the torture, make it stop.
Make it
And
end.
Freddie, thank you so much before becoming a member of the channel. I appreciate that. Cece had a question. You know, Cece was around back then. She wanted to know if you knew Harold Sims, the operating
Oh,
Thetan
I have
level 3
glasses going on.
supervisor at the time. Harold Sims.
Oh. Eh, the name is familiar. I can't remember the face. I'll put it that
Same.
way.
His name sounds familiar. It does.
Mhm, definitely.
Yeah. So is that at that point after you finish operating Thetan level 4, is that when you get recruited to go work at the international base, but not as a Sea Org member?
Yes.
So at this point, you've done the St. Hill Special Briefing course, which is like getting a master's degree for as an auditor. You've done up through the operating Thetan levels, level 4. These are in Scientology, like big feats. And you somehow managed to sidestep and dodge being recruited into the Sea Org. I think that's what's most impressive to me right now, because many of us know the pressure that's put on.
Yeah, it's hardcore. It's
But
hardcore.
it's hardcore, but even as such a young person, you really you held your ground on it. So
Mhm.
how did you end up going to the international base to work for Scientology, not as a Sea Org member?
Okay, so let's see. I think it was towards. I might get the timing off just a little bit.
Fine.
It was either right after OT4, the level of auditing, or yeah, it had to be.
Mm.
But then I went back to complete the briefing course. I was approached because, okay, by that time, I have to back up a little bit. By that time, I had become an established electrician and
Ooh.
I had rewired an art director's home in Los Angeles. It took me 8 months with a crew. And from there, I went into the film industry. So now I'm working as a set decorator, an art director, a prop master, and I did that for 35 plus years.
Wow.
Yeah. So I had this reputation within the organization that I knew about filmmaking.
Mhm.
And so I was officially invited. I had to go through clearances, of course, that I had to pay for.
What? They made you pay for your own clearances? I guess I don't know why I'm acting surprised. Now,
Don't be
tell
shocked.
me what clearances are and what that looks like. What is
Okay. So basically, it was a series of security checks or interrogations to make sure that you weren't going there for nefarious reasons. That, you're clean, you don't have any ulterior motives.
You're not going there to kidnap David Miscavige's dog.
Right, exactly. So they have to clear you through all this stuff. So I had to go do that and I had to be very secretive about it because I can't tell anyone except for like that person that is delivering that to me,
Yes.
those checks. Other than that, you can't say where you're going
Mhm.
at all. And I didn't even know where I was going until
Yeah.
the end. I mean, exactly like the location. I had no idea, but I knew that it was a big deal and they wanted my help. They wanted my advice in the props department and the art department,
Mhm.
like how to build sets, how to do this, that, and the other. And so I went to Int Base, Gold.
Yeah.
And I went and I toured their studios. And that's where I had my little fun run in with Miscavige.
Oh, do tell.
It didn't last long. It was pretty quick.
Mm.
I ended up spending one night there, and I was so tripped out. Like I was like, "Whoa, it's beautiful and all, but it's creepy. I got to get out of here." And I just
Very
left.
kind of like North Korea, like they
Yeah,
have all the props.
yeah,
It looks nice, the
yeah.
landscaping, the buildings, but nothing is happening. No one's walking around looking happy.
Nobody's happy. Everybody's like, head down, or kind of like, and Miscavige. I was touring this like gigantic warehouse with a bunch of props, probably for an event, upcoming event,
Mhm.
like big set pieces. And I was explaining there was a small crew of props people that was hanging out with me. And I was explaining, like, oh, you should wear a belt with certain tools and this and that. And here's how you could handle this better. And here's how you install a jack on the back of a wall and stuff like
Mhm.
that, just
Yeah.
technical stuff. And Miscavige came, all of a sudden, it got really quiet. Like everybody shut up.
Mhm.
And here he came in uniform with an entourage. Probably, I don't even know who they were. Probably, could have been Jaeger. I have no idea. But it was just like a small battalion of people coming down the line.
Yeah.
And and that's how I met Mitch Brisker, actually, was in that whole scenario. And I was like leaving the building, and he turns to me, and everybody stops, and he goes, "Who is that and why is she here?" Or "Why the hell is she here?" I think he said.
Mhm.
And I just went, "Oh," because of course I had, at the time, ultimate respect for him, but I didn't know how mean and just downright nasty. Like,
Yeah.
how about you just come up and say hello, hi?
Yeah.
Great.
Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to the
Right.
Gold
Like,
Days.
yeah. No, no, none of that. It was boom. Who is that chick? Why is she here?
Mhm.
Like, it was, I just said, okay, I'll be gone soon.
Did anyone explain to him while you were there? Somebody must have.
Well, the thing is, he had to know I was there, who I was. He
Mhm.
had to, I'm sure, because he's a micromanager.
Yeah.
How do you get clearance to get up there as a
Mhm.
non-Sea Org member without him at least approving it?
Mhm.
Maybe there wasn't a picture of me attached to the notification he got, but I thought that was kind of rude. Like,
Yeah.
you should
'Cause it's
know
a
who
small
I am.
small place, relatively speaking, right?
Oh,
So,
yeah.
there's a bunch of randoms that are running around that nobody would know about, especially with
Yeah.
your
No, no, no. There's no way you get in or out of there without him
Mhm.
knowing who you are. So I
Did
thought,
sorry. Did anything surprise you about being on the base, being a public, you had done so much Scientology? What was your reality versus your expectation versus reality?
okay, wow, great question. Much like other prior Sea Org members that I've listened to, you expect it to be sort of like this perfect scenario, like the
Mhm.
perfect, happy, ethical and just pleasant place to be, and everybody's sparkly. And
Mhm.
so I thought, wow, I'm going to like the Mecca, or
Yeah.
the Plutonic almost. And when I got there, yeah, the buildings are pretty, the rooms are pretty, the grounds are pretty for the most part, but the people were not. And
Mhm.
that was like very interesting to me, that I was like, wait a second, this is supposed to be the ultimate scene, like the ideal scene
Yeah.
for Scientology.
Mhm.
And no, no, I felt like the little interaction that I had with the staff, and it was very varied from, people coming to clean the room that I was staying in,
Mhm.
to people in our, different divisions of the organization walking around together. I even witnessed a couple of musters, and I thought everybody was going to be standing up tall and smiling.
Proud
And
of where they are, happy.
yeah,
This is the
yeah,
ultimate in Scientology. Being
yeah,
full-time surely is gonna make this whole group saner because they
that's
live
right.
Scientology.
That's right. And it didn't take long for me to realize, oh my gosh, there's so many unhappy people here who cannot show it.
Yeah.
Or maybe they don't even know it. And that's the sad part.
But you can feel it, like, you can feel
Yes.
that energy, just like how we can feel when people are angry. What did it
Yes.
feel like to you in that way when you would walk around and be around these people?
Well, part of it was kind of like what Miscavige said to me, like, "What are you doing here?" kind of thing. There was a
Yeah.
little bit of that. I was like, "Okay, well, sorry, I was invited and I paid to get here, so whatever." There was part of that.
Mhm.
But the best word I can use to describe it was incredible seriousness
Yes.
as opposed to lightness.
Yeah.
Intense seriousness
Mhm.
in the air, in their eyes, in their voices. Like, this is super serious what's happening right up here.
Yeah.
And, and you got to be serious too.
Mhm. Very strained.
Yes.
Very basically, this is a group of people that were under a tremendous amount of
Oh, yeah.
suppression
Oh,
by
totally.
Miscavige and others who were perpetuating the abuses that he was
Hmm.
handing down.
Hmm.
It's amazing to me how the few people who weren't Sea Org members that were allowed there were allowed in ways, 'cause you could cut it with a knife. I've heard that
Oh,
from
yeah.
members
You
as well.
could absolutely cut it with a knife.
My sister described it that way when she went up there when she was 14, 15 years old, that
Mhm.
what stood out to her so much was how unhappy everybody seemed. And same thing, she thought, and I thought that, we all thought that when you get to the international base, that's where the happiest of the happy, because Scientology is supposed to make you happy. So surely everybody there is living in this utopia where you can leave your purse out because no one's going to steal it and all this stuff, and you get there and it's just this giant solid bummer. It
That's about right.
you
That's
think
about
you're
right.
going to this amazing party and somebody goes and just takes a crap in the middle of the living room, and everybody walks around smelling it, you see it, you know it, but you can't react or complain about it.
Right.
You'll be in trouble.
Exactly. Yeah, there was it's a threatening environment. It's a feel it, when I say serious,
Yeah.
behind that seriousness, you can sense that there's some kind of threat to something in your life or you personally
Yeah.
is sitting right behind under your skin, you know?
And you were there to train Sea Org members on doing what you did?
Yeah, I was there to just, do some recommendations and teach a few things. Yeah. Hmm.
How did that go? Were they receptive?
Yes, they were.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. There was this veil of like, oh, thank you for telling me that, but we already have our own stuff, like how we do it. But then there was a few people who said, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. That's a great idea. Or, oh, wow, I never knew about that product that we could
Yeah,
use. Or, thank you for telling me about that special tape or that lighting
yeah,
situation. There was some of that for sure.
yeah,
Um, but it was an eye-opening experience, put it that way. But
yeah.
I still shoved it back. I kept doing Scientology for a long time after that. I didn't leave until just over 3 years ago.
What was the thing that pushed you over to the edge when you decided that you were going to leave Scientology?
Well, as with a lot of folks, it was a buildup of doubt, a buildup.
Mhm,
Um, okay. In March of 2020, which happened to coincide with the opening of COVID,
mhm,
I flew from where I live to Los Angeles to do services at Advanced Organization Los Angeles.
mhm,
Just like a cleanup, preps, or maybe get on to the next OT level.
mhm.
And it was the worst experience ever. The people I knew from my prior living there for many years, many, many years, were like pretty much all gone. Um, or I couldn't find them. and nobody would tell me where they were. I just, as I said in my last interview with Mr. Shelton, even though I was never Sea Org, I felt like some of these folks were my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey,
And
where's
they
my pal
disappear.
phone?
And they never tell you, even in the
No.
Sea Org, when certain people go missing or they're no longer around, you just learn not to ask because you're never told, because they're not going to tell
Yeah,
you if somebody blew or they left.
right.
Once in a
Or
while,
they died.
yeah, or they died, even more
Which
so.
which happened to one of my buddies too.
What happened?
Well, he died. A
And they,
couple of them did,
mhm.
but I wasn't told. And I was going looking for them and asking around, like, hey, where's so and so? Where's so and so? Where's so and so? And I'm like, oh well, they get
Yeah. When you
maybe
were
over there.
there, when you were there in 2020 and you said that it was such a bad experience, what else was happening that made you
Oh,
feel that way?
I see. Okay. Um. Okay. I went there. This is a financial thing, but still, I think it's important. I was promised by the senior director of processing of the Advanced Org of Los Angeles that I could get through my next little thing in one intensive, which is 12 and a half hours of counseling, as they call it, or
Mhm.
auditing. I was promised that. That's why I got on a plane and flew myself out there. I stayed in that little hotel across the street.
That wasn't when I was there, that wasn't a little hotel.
No,
Tell us, because we all see with people who are live streaming and
the
protesting
Fountain Building.
Scientology, the fountain building,
Yeah,
we see it from the outside. We see public people coming and going with their e-meters. What is it like in there?
it's okay. It looks like what it is, which is a small, mm, cheesily renovated apartment building. So some of the rooms have kitchenettes, some of the rooms don't. It kind of smells funky, but it's not bad. It smells
Yeah,
like fresh paint all the time.
that's
There's
interesting.
trashy carpet on the floor. Uh, the heating sucks.
What would you recall what the rates were? I'm curious.
Yeah. Oh, this is yeah. Okay. So I think it, it gets weird, but I had to move rooms at one point because I had to long. I'll get back to that in a sec. But I had to move rooms. The rate I think was uh, 160 for a
Wow.
single,
A
and
night?
then but yeah, and then the other room that I had to move into because they got booked up, and I had to go to a bigger room was like 250,
What?
270, something like that. Yeah,
And it's pretty basic and smelly.
very, very.
Wow. Were you required to stay there?
Not required, but because I didn't want to rent a car and go like I thought I was going to be there for like a week and a half, maybe
Yeah.
that. You know, I ended up being there for much longer. And the reason why that happened, and this, I'll back this up. So meanwhile, I'm paying for these rooms.
Yeah. That's
Um,
really expensive. I mean,
it
that's
is.
like
That's like 4 star.
yeah, regular hotel prices, especially at 250, and you're gonna get a lot more. I mean, even in Hollywood there than what that was.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, that's typical Scientology.
Yeah.
But so anyway, I started in on this one intensive, 12 and a half hours, and that's it. I'm out of here. Well, then of course came confrontations with several of the staff telling me, "Nope, you're not through the process here. You need to stay on board. You cannot leave.
Yeah.
You know, as a trained auditor, that you're in the middle of an action, as they say, and you cannot leave." And so I ended up there 3 more in intensives later,
And that's 12 and a half hours per intensive.
and a lot of money.
36 hours. So you're paying, and these are advanced org prices too. So
Yes.
these aren't cheap 12.5 hour
Yes.
intensives. So you've now bought 4. You don't remember what they cost, do you? I totally forgot.
I'll get it. They actually at that time had lowered the cost. It used to be 3,500 per intensive.
At AO?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was more.
No, maybe it was 3,750.
Sure. Yeah.
But all I know is I ended up, let's see, 12,000 in debt.
And you're paying $250 a night at their
Yes.
crappy hotel. Were there any amenities? Was there a gym, an office area, a grill?
Oh, there was a small outside deck where you can go smoke a cigarette.
Where's the deck? Is it on the back side of the
On the
building?
back side, yeah.
And just one deck?
Yeah. Well, they put a fence up. It's more like a patio.
Is it on the lowest level or is
Yeah.
it on a higher level?
No, it's
Okay,
on the lowest level.
because I don't think that we've seen it. So when you're back there, what do you see? I mean,
A
because it's
couple of
like
benches,
there.
a couple of tables, and that's where the fellow public we'd hang out at night after course or after whatever they're doing and talk. But there was not a grill. There was no gym, to my knowledge. No,
Yeah.
and there's definitely no room service. You had to go across the street to the cafe to get whatever you want. They did have a little tiny fridge in the room, so you could stick stuff in there.
Yeah. Were there safes in the room for the confidential
No.
materials? So you just
Not in the ones that I was in.
yeah.
I don't think you can. I don't think you can do that there. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. We see people coming and going, which looks like their materials and stuff. I mean, where else you can audit? They can't
Well,
audit.
maybe they have a safe in the office area down below. I don't know.
Yeah.
That could
So
be.
so you're paying ridiculous prices staying in this crappy Scientology hotel. What is so I have not been in the cafe for a million years. And the last time I was there, I was getting my daughter out of there. And I was
Oh gosh.
waiting outside where what is now the cafe,
Right.
sitting on that
Yep.
that, where
Yeah.
you
That
would
wall. That
yeah,
little. Yep.
just waiting for her. Back then, there weren't tables and things like that out there.
Right.
What is the cafe like on the inside now, or at least when you were there back in 2020?
Um. Okay. So they have. Well, the outside area they have tables set up, but nowadays, like I'm watching some of the protesting videos, and it looks like they've really clamped down on how much public are on the street
Yeah.
to avoid that. But in 2020, there's random tables set up outside, and then there's the little stairwell that goes down into the cafe itself.
Yeah.
The cafe has a big, long table where the hot food is, random shelves with granola bars and vitamins and stuff like that. But it's not a place you want to sit down in.
Yeah.
You want to just get what you need and get out.
Yeah. And being that when you were there in 2020, were you there during the rollout of Scientology's response to the pandemic?
Yes.
Do
Yes.
tell.
Oh my gosh, it was crazy. So this again is March of 2020. So I'm staying at the hotel. I'm going back and forth. I'm kind of already pissed off because you're making me spend more money. You're making me borrow money, and I'm anti-debt. Like I try not to be in debt as much as I possibly can.
Mhm.
But yet I'm being forced into this viewpoint that you have to stay because it's the tech. You
Yeah.
cannot leave.
They would convince Scientologists, because I remember this. They would convince us that, like, well, if you leave in the middle of this step, like,
Right,
you could like go psychotic or be hit by a
right,
bus, or they would
right.
do this too gruesome thing of tell you all these horrible things in order to control us into
Yeah,
being so terrified of leaving that
right.
we're going to pay the extra money to stay and get through it.
That's I was beyond that point, and I want to get back to your actual question of
Yeah.
like what tipped me over the edge is that I was beyond the point of being afraid. Here's what I realized. I was beyond the point of being afraid for my spiritual eternity.
Mm,
Like I decided somewhere back before, but I didn't realize it at the time, that I am not doomed. I'm actually okay. Like I
yeah.
don't need this shit. Pardon
Yeah.
my French.
Yeah.
Like I really don't. And
Yeah.
and somehow it all came together in this perfect storm
Yeah.
of, wait, you're making me stay. The pandemic is coming. Now I have to wear, like, reception desk is gloves and masks, and they're spraying everything
Do you
all day long.
recall do you recall as a public person in Scientology during that time of the early days of the pandemic, do you recall what the instructions were to you as a public person?
Mhm.
What did they tell you you needed to do? Or did they tell you what was happening?
Yeah. Well, it kind of came through. There was a directive, I believe, that was on the counter in the reception area that gave you specific instructions. There was a booklet that was handed out to every single public that came in, and we were actually encouraged to give it to everybody, like out on the streets, like go pass them out.
What was the booklet about?
It was like how to be well, or like wash your hands, wear gloves, wear a mask.
Yeah.
And it was very, very simple, but it was all published in a certain way to make it look as if we are forwarding health for humanity, basically.
And they wanted those handed out beyond the
Oh
Scientologists.
yeah. I went up and delivered them to restaurants around the streets and stuff like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
It was like a wellness book. I can't remember the exact name of it, but I remember I still probably have one laying around here. So
Were you there when the shutdown actually happened?
I don't think so, because how it went down for me. So yeah, you cannot wear gloves when you're holding on to the cans
Yeah.
of the e-meter, the
Yeah.
electrometer, Hubbard electrometer. Um, but I remember you had to wear them around when you were in the building. You could take
Yeah.
them off to go in session, but you had to wash your hands like crazy.
When you went in session, you weren't solo
No.
auditing. So when you went in with an auditor, was the auditor wearing a mask
Yes,
during the whole session?
not all of them.
Not all the auditors or not all the
Right,
sessions?
both.
That's
But
interesting.
yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah. It's inconsistent. That's what's
I
interesting,
know, I know.
which is
Like,
unusual.
what's the policy? Like, what
Yeah,
is it?
that's
No,
unusual.
they would put them. If I recall correctly, no, they couldn't wear it in session. I don't remember that actually. No, but they would slip it on when you go down the hallway or
Yeah.
anywhere within the building. No, you're right. You're right on that, because that doesn't make any sense. I don't
So
remember that.
both the auditor and the person receiving auditing would take their masks off when they were in there. Was there any additional you had to wear gloves, so as soon as you arrive at the advanced org, you have to put on gloves and wear a mask just to go around the building. So
Yeah,
then when
and they're
you're in
spraying
session
like crazy, and they're making you watch a movie that they made. That was like on the form to get your next service. You had to go sit down and watch this movie, which is a promotional video about how they're spraying this decon, whatever it is,
yeah,
to eradicate um, germs or bacteria.
yeah.
And
What
there
was
were people
did you
constantly running. There were other Sea Org members running around with masks on, with gloves on, scrubbing everything all day long. It was pretty weird. But by the end of so what happened was, I finally got through the last session of this security checking interrogation junk.
Mhm.
And it was late at night. I knew this was going to happen. I thought I was going to get trapped there like, maybe the planes will shut down. Like, I don't know. Like, I
Yeah.
literally thought, how am I going to get home? So I told a person, I said, look, I have to go take a nap so that I can get enough sleep so that I can finish tonight. I've
Yeah.
already had 5 run-ins with another senior person, literally crying my eyes out saying, "I wanna go home. I wanna go home. You" They wouldn't let me go, or I decided whatever. You get the idea.
Yeah.
I was under heavy stress, and I said, I just wanna go sleep. I'll be back, and we'll finish this up." And I did that, and I came back, and yeah, granted, it was late at night, but I had enough sleep, and I had enough food. I
Yeah.
was good to go.
What
So
how late? Well, I mean, they didn't put you in session. We're not talking like after 10, are we?
mm-mm.
Yeah.
No, I
But you
started before 10, but I didn't get out of there until about 11:30.
ooh.
But I finished it.
Yeah.
But I made the qualification secretary, which is the person who has to grant me, like, good bidding to go.
Yeah.
I made him get up out of bed. I did. I'm like, "I don't care. I'm leaving.
Yeah,
This
that's
is
right.
it. I gotta get on a plane."
Get that bitch up.
Yeah, I did that. I did that, and they're like, "Well, yeah, right, how about tomorrow morning?" I'm like, "No, not tomorrow morning."
Mhm. So
So
the other Scientologists that were there at the time, was there any, like, were they talking at all? I'm curious as to their mindset.
mm,
You gotta wear the gloves, you gotta wear the mask, what they're being
yeah,
told. How did they process it? Did anybody push back?
yeah, on that little back patio behind the Fountain Building Hotel thing,
Yeah.
there that's kinda like a private area where you're not on camera. Maybe you are, for all I
Mhm.
know. But, there were some people
Is
saying, "This is."
let me ask you, that private area in the back, is there
Mhm.
a way what's behind it? Is there another street and it faces the street, or is it completely blocked off? Is there any foot traffic that goes by that back patio?
They built a low fence. It's like a small patio with little benches and tables, and there's a low fence. I think it's blocked off, but it's not but by a wall.
Yeah.
If I recall, it faces the street, but there's some foliage there. There's, like,
Yeah,
trees.
so it's kind of private back
Yeah.
there.
Mhm.
I'm curious because 'cause I've not heard any of the that I'm aware of protesters or live streamers go back there, or they
You
might
can't
not even know that
you
it
can't
exists.
get back there.
Yeah.
I don't think you can get back there unless you go, well, you could get back there on the sidewalk
Mhm.
and then turn left from whatever street that is, you
Yeah.
know? You could
Yeah,
do it
behind the
that
parking
way.
structure.
Hmm?
Behind the parking structure, go back behind.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what were they saying then out there on the patio about everything that was happening with the germs and the spraying and the gloves and the masks?
I would say there was about, I don't know, on any given evening or time that morning or evening that I was out there, there could be, say, 8 8 people,
Mhm.
maybe, and of all ages.
Yeah.
But I did hear, especially from the guys, I would hear things like, "This is crap. This doesn't make any sense. I hate this," stuff like that. But the mindset was also that it's kind of like a half and half.
Mhm.
Half of it, or half of the folks were saying things like, "Aren't we the best that we're taking charge of this situation and spraying everything down and teaching people how to be safe?" Like, there was that crowd.
Yeah.
And then there was the other crowd that was saying, "What the hell is this about? Because this makes 0 sense to me." Like, I
Yeah.
don't I'm not doing this. So it was a 50-50 split per
Which
my
is
experience.
Which is interesting because in Scientology, it goes to show that on some things, they're not all uniformly thinking the same
Mm,
way, especially
that
with
is
something
true.
like that, and I was curious about that because I, of course, was long gone from Scientology during that time,
Mhm.
but based on the Scientologist that I knew, I would think there's no way that person would be compliant because of
Right.
belief system and what they think, so it's interesting to hear that in your experience, it was still split,
It
even though
was.
they were Scientologists. Did you do anything at your own local org when you went back?
Yeah.
And were they doing the same things with the cleaning and the gloves and the
Oh yeah.
everything?
Oh yeah. 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 Yeah.
Mhm.
I did a let's see, was it after that? No, it was prior to that. Sorry. I worked as a volunteer minister as well.
Mhm.
I went to 9/11. I went to Hurricane Katrina. I went to wildfires in
Mm.
California. Um, I enjoyed that work, but to be that was another chink in my thought process about
Yeah.
Scientology. 9/11 was one thing.
Mhm.
I flew all the way from California to New York to be there and help.
Mhm.
And I actually felt like I was really helping. I was with the cops and helping deliver medicines and water, and it was physical work, but it was genuine work.
Yeah.
And then over the years, it became so bad that I would be called to volunteer for, let's say, a wildfire
Mhm.
in Northern California. And I would go down and get a briefing at the big blue building in LA, and then jump in my car, put a couple of Sea Org members in the back of my car, and drive to the fire
Mm.
area. And the briefing prior to leaving was all about not so much what we can give the people that need help. It was about, can you make sure that you get whatever you do on camera?
Mhm.
You need to be delivering what they call assists, um, to firefighters and cops, but you need to make sure you get it on camera.
Get it on camera.
Yeah. And so
Definitely was
it
much
became
more of
like
that
this
going on.
weird thing where I'm like, I go to Starbucks to get donations for coffee to go to a firehouse. And you want me to actually knock on the door of a firehouse, which I love fire people, they're great,
Mhm.
and say, here's some coffee. Hey, by the way, can I lay down and feel my finger with a camera on you? Like, it's not going to happen. Like, that is ridiculous.
So they were like, "Okay, go get your Starbucks, take it over to the
Yes.
firefighters and the policing, and convince them to let you give them a nervous system."
Right. And film it.
I
Um, it's a little much. It just became this like crazy Truman Show, bizarre. This is not what volunteer ministering is in my book, or never was.
Mhm.
It's a PR show. So you
Yeah,
can play it at the event.
yeah,
And I'm not doing that. So that was another chink in my thought process. It's like,
yeah.
this, this doesn't make
What was
sense.
the final blow where you're like, "Yeah, I'm out?"
It was a family member conversation.
Mhm,
I flew to visit him in March, or May. No, I'm sorry, September
mhm,
of 2020 and 2021 actually. And he sat me down and he asked me some very smart questions. I knew that he had been prior. He wasn't really into Scientology anymore. I knew that.
yeah,
So we kind of avoided the subject.
yeah,
But he's near and dear to me. So he sat me down and he says, "Hey, what's your concept of Scientology these days?" And I was like, "Well, I'm not afraid for my spiritual eternity." He goes,
yeah,
"Oh, that's pretty cool." And then he posed his questions in such a kind way, instead of like, antagonistic.
yeah,
He wasn't attacking me or attacking Scientology.
mhm,
He just said, "Hey, have you ever thought about the fact that you can't question anything in Scientology?
yeah,
Have you ever really thought about that?" And I go, "Yeah, well, yeah, because it's right." And, but it stuck. And then he goes, "Okay, well, if it's right, why can't, and it's based on basically science or truth." I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, why can't, in science, peers, your peer group can question those things. Like, you test theories.
Yeah.
Other people are allowed to get their viewpoint in there.
Yeah, and they have to be able to get the same result doing what you did
Exactly.
to prove
Right.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So I said, yeah, okay. And he goes, well, have you ever been able to question it, the subject itself, or L. Ron Hubbard? And I stopped dead in my tracks. I was like, no, I never have even thought of that.
Yeah.
And then he told me, by the way, I'm declared.
And that is the type of thinking, free thinking that
Yeah.
does get people in trouble in Scientology.
Mm-hmm.
When you question, you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't
Yeah.
make a lot of
Right.
sense.
It's not. It doesn't connect. Like, it's not working.
Mhm.
Yeah. So he says, by the way, I'm declared, and if I was a good, quote unquote, good Scientologist, I would have packed my bags and left that house immediately.
Yeah.
But I wasn't. So I went to sleep on it, and I thought about the things that he had said to me. And there's a little bit more, but it was all along that same train of thought. And I just thought about it, and I connected that up with my experience recently, and then the volunteer minister experiences and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, you know what? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And it was a very shocking and tragic thing for me because that was my identity
Yeah.
underneath it all. I mean, full on. I was hardcore my whole life.
Mhm.
So it was really hard for me to um, figure out, who am I then? Like, who am I? Because when you're born into a cult, you don't have a pre-cult identity or personality. So you got to figure out, who's you.
Mhm.
What do you think? And for a long time, and still every once in a while, it creeps up on me. But you have to, when thoughts would come forward to me, like anything I thought about, I go, okay, am I thinking that, or is that coming from the cult or the
Mhm.
training that I had or whatever?
Yeah.
So it's a tricky thing, and I've done therapy. I'm all for it if you find the right person. And I'm all for talking out, speaking out, like I'm doing with you, because it's therapeutic for me.
Yes.
And my hope is that it's therapeutic for someone else,
Mhm.
hopefully more than one.
Yeah.
But but it's learning who you really are, as
Mhm.
opposed to who you think you are, or were taught or told you were,
Yeah.
because of a coercive control, nasty group.
Mhm. Especially without, like you said, having that we were one way and then we became
Yeah,
Scientologists,
there
and then
is no.
gotta go back to who we are. It was because I remember that being kind of a sticking point for me too,
Yeah.
of like, "Okay, well, I understand the concept, but this is all I've ever known. It's all I've
Right.
ever been.
Exactly.
How do I sort that out?" And
Yeah.
there's not, like, I feel like there's not a clear completely clear path to that. I feel like it happened for me in stages. It's almost
Yeah,
like
it
a
does.
certain I could confront and face a certain amount of the truth, and then I
Mhm.
would have to be with that truth for a while,
Mhm.
and more truth would be obvious and evident to me
Mhm.
as the blinders started coming off, and I would have to be with it, and sometimes I'd have to put it down because 'cause I'm like, "Oh, I don't know." Because it's such a huge shift in your entire being to let go of something
Yeah.
that was your entire world and your parents and
Yes.
family and
Yeah.
where you worked and the
And
people you
friends
hung out with.
and
Exactly.
school and everything.
All of your friends. So
Mhm.
when you had to shed all of that, I mean, and you really have only been out of Scientology for a few years. What would you say about like your life after a cult since then?
Well, one thing that I did do, which I broke all the rules, I'm such a rebel. I married a non-Scientologist 20 almost 27 years ago.
Mhm.
that's a big no-no.
Yeah.
In fact, I was told within Scientology, I was told two different things. I was told, oh, that's not a problem. But then I was also told, oh, you'll never get onto the upper levels unless you get him on the bridge or you drop him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I'm not dumping my husband.
Yeah.
There's no way. I love him.
Yeah.
So the reason I bring that up is because he's been a good sounding board for me.
Yeah.
And a good way of me comparing, like, well, he's actually a really great guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's very, he's successful. He's generally very happy and he makes me happy. So wait, if he doesn't use Scientology, then, okay. And none of my kids are in,
Mm-hmm.
thankfully. My mom is out, thankfully. All the rest of my family are out, thankfully. And I look at, I used to have this viewpoint that, oh, you guys just don't get it. Like, you're missing out. And the more I looked
You
at them,
guys being Scientologists, former Scientologists, are never in.
no, I'm talking about my family and my friends
Got it. Okay.
that are not Scientologists or are out.
Yeah.
Right. And they're doing well. In general, they're doing well. And I was unhappy because of the pressure to make more money, go get a new job or invest or do this or convince your husband to pay for it. I was sick and tired of that pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And then I looked at, like, well, how much happier am I really doing? And like, how much better is my life?
Yeah.
It's not. It's not. It doesn't work. And it took me a long time to confront that,
Mm-hmm.
that it just does not work. There might be a couple of little tiny things in there that are great. Like,
Yeah.
I'll agree that acknowledging people's communication is a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great example of something that is taught in Scientology, but not limited to. It is not something L. Ron Hubbard created. He was just
No.
really good at codifying and packaging it in a way
Yes.
he could sell it to us where we thought,
Yes.
oh, this doesn't exist anyplace else. I'm going to
Yep.
grab a couple questions and comments here. Little Things at Home says, do Scientologists yell a lot because they think it's all tone 40? So my 2 cents on this is they yell a lot because, yes, they think it's tone 40 in Scientology. You're using intention and you're impinging. Personally, I think it's because they don't know how to regulate their emotions. That's the only tool they know how to do is to scream and yell and freak out. There is a lack of emotional intelligence, I think, when you're in a coercive group, high control cult Scientology, and you don't develop those skills. And until you do, that's all you know how to do is to yell or respond that way and not being able to communicate. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah. And I would also say that if you see it happening around you, especially within an organization,
Mhm.
then it becomes like the way to be. Like,
Yes,
oh, that's how you get things done. Okay. I can,
exactly. Exactly. That's exactly it. Is you believe because every people around you or people that you respect are doing that. So you must
You
believe
think
that.
that's the way to go.
Marcy, thank you so much for doing 5 Scientology Life After Our Cult memberships. Appreciate that, Marcy. I'm sure you guys already all said thank you in the chat to whoever got one. Let's see here. Mock is saying, so they mask up for passing each other, like in the hall, but no mask for the prolonged exposure in a confined room. Interesting.
Don't try to make Scientology make sense. Never gonna happen.
You will hurt yourself. You will hurt yourself. Becky wants to know, what do you think about the lion on L. Ron Hubbard Way, the one outside Asho?
Wow. Well, that lion came in, I think it was after I finished the briefing course. I have mixed feelings about that lion. I think it's kind of cool in a way, but it's also a bad memory.
No, I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I think
It-
it's ugly, but I know a lot of it is the memories that are tied to it.
Yeah.
The energy
Right.
that I feel
That's
like
how I am.
there. Yeah. I don't like it.
It's just a little not right. The
Well,
hotel-
I went as for Halloween. I went as the lion in front of Asho.
Did you?
I did. I wear a lion costume.
Awesome.
Yes. Cricket says the hotel sounds like a no-tell motel. Yuck.
Pretty much. I mean, it wasn't disgusting. It was decent, but it just, no.
Well, it's not $250 a night good.
No,
That's what
gosh.
I'm
That's
saying. It's like
ridiculous.
you're supposed to be a freaking nonprofit. I mean, how does that work with the hotel then? It has to be different.
It's different. I'm pretty sure it's a separate, again,
Yeah,
another, almost like a front group, like a separate
there's
corporation.
no way you're not making money, and
Of course.
especially when what services are you actually providing? Jersey Jan has a great question. Julie, were you afraid about leaving?
Yes.
What were you afraid of?
Wow. When I first decided that I was done, I had that conversation with a family member, and then I decided that's it, I'm done.
Yeah.
Then I had a long conversation with my husband. We drove all the way back to where we live, and I was petrified. I thought that they're going to hack my phone. I started watching Leah Remini and the Aftermath on TV,
Yeah.
and I thought they were going to hack my HBO account. I closed all the blinds. I was checking the streets. I mean, I was paranoid.
Yeah.
Paranoid. And then I read literally 82 books. I even got 82 books. I even got like German ones translated into English. I read every book I could get my hands on from a
About what were the books about?
former Scientologists.
Okay, nice.
I found them in old bookstores. I did hunting on the internet. I printed them out if they weren't in print anymore. I read and read and read and read and read. And so the more I got to understand what a liar Mr. L. Ron Hubbard was, and what a jerk and devious, gross guy David Miscavige is, the more I face that fact, like you can't watch and read all this stuff. These people are not lying. Like this really happened.
Yeah.
So once I put that together, I was like, fine, I'm done. I'm officially completely done.
Yeah.
And I'm embarrassed. I was embarrassed for a while to have been a member of a group that could carry out such atrocities. Not to mention atrocities on myself. We didn't even touch on that.
Do you want to touch on that?
For a sec, if you want.
Yeah.
If you have time.
Yeah, we do. Tell me what happened.
When I was a teenager living in the Manor Hotel, I was SA'd by another Scientologist who lived the next door down from me. I went to, it was not nice. It was pretty gross. Like, not good. And I went to my ethics officer and I was told not to tell a soul.
And you told the ethics officer what happened, that this man assaulted you? This not something you willingly consented to?
No, definitely not. No.
You told them that.
Hand over your face, forcibly stripped down, that kind of thing. Yeah, like full on.
And who was this person in regard to Scientology?
He was another public that was living there, and all I knew of him, I didn't know him, barely. His name was Rick from Oklahoma. That's all I know.
And were you a minor then?
Yes.
And how old do you think he was?
Mid-20s.
So he's a Scientologist there during services. You go to your ethics officer, like your person, and the response was just don't tell anyone?
Oh, yeah. Well, that was number one. Okay, keep this in-house.
Yeah.
And then I was assigned to do a handling to figure out what I did wrong, ethics conditions, as they say, which is the list of steps that you're supposed to do to get more ethical. So I got in trouble, but don't tell your dad, don't tell your brothers, don't tell your family, and don't tell anyone, and certainly don't tell the cops.
Yeah.
And then the guy actually was gone within 2 days. And I was told, like, don't worry about it, he's gone.
Mhm.
So that's the end of it. I'm supposed to pretend it never happened.
Yeah. And it happened on property there at Celebrity Center at the Manor Hotel?
Yes, ma'am.
Mhm. Well, first,
And
of course.
of course, they don't want me to say anything because it's a gigantic liability.
Yeah, yeah, and you're a minor.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, you know? And then
Oh, yeah.
they obviously handled it in true Scientology's way. I'm like, that's it's and the unfortunate thing is it's a story and it's an experience that we've heard over and over and over again of people
Yeah.
being victims of SA in Scientology and it being completely covered up
Yeah.
to protect Scientology. How long did you keep that secret?
Until October of 2022.
So how many years was that?
Well, I suck at math. So that, like, let's say 87 to 2022.
Wow.
I did file a police report in October of 2022, and I did do an interview on camera with the Hollywood Division, LAPD,
Mhm.
with 2 detectives, and I laid out everything, and I fully wrote it up, what occurred, how it occurred, and the, main reason I did that was because I didn't want well, I didn't think it was possible. Like, good luck finding Rick from Oklahoma. Like,
Yeah,
good
and
luck.
that's all you knew about him?
Yeah,
You never knew his whole name?
no. But it's
Mhm.
in files somewhere.
Scientology sure knows his whole name.
Absolutely, they do. I should back that up and say that I did bring that up also in session, um, many years later. We're talking like 2006 or 7, um, on a confessional, which is like when you're revealing things that you've done or have happened. But that never went anywhere.
What did the police say then in 2022? Were there any options? I mean, was there anything they could do given
Well, oh yes. Oh, here's a goodie. So, as far as hunting up Rick, they said they're gonna. They opened up the case. They made it a case, so they're
Mhm.
not going to stop. But I know that they're up against a brick wall. But what I did get accomplished was, and okay, this is another name I'll drop. My godmother is Susan Watson.
Susan Watson?
Yeah, do you know that name?
I don't think so.
It's okay. She, for quite a while, was the president of Celebrity Center International.
Okay.
I don't think she holds that exact post anymore,
Mhm.
but she is in the president's office. She's a longtime Sea Org member, and she's my godmother. So we have a loving, well, had. I don't think we, I don't think it's possible anymore. I think I'm pretty much on the outs. But um, wait, what was your question?
What did was there
Oh,
anything
what are the
you
cops? Okay. Oh, so I was concerned about Susan Watson. The last time I saw her, she's in her 80s. She's elderly, and she's in the Sea Org, and she's solo. She's single, to my knowledge. I know her kids. They're grown. So I had a welfare check done on her.
in
At
2022?
No, this is like a month ago, two
Oh.
months ago, something like that.
Uh-huh.
A few months ago. So the cops actually went into Celebrity Center with body cam on
Mhm.
to do a welfare check on my godmother, Susan Watson. And the point I was trying to make with the police was that, granted, okay, you might never find Rick from Oklahoma. He could be in jail. He could be dead. I don't even know. But I want it known that Scientology covers up crimes. We're talking real crimes.
Mhm.
like essay. And I want it on paper. I want it filed. Even if I'm just another voice, another person with another story, I want it repeated and repeated and repeated. I will just add to that motion because they do cover up crimes.
Mhm.
And so that was but then I thought it was actually pretty cool of them to go do that welfare check.
Yeah,
And they
what
reported
came of
back.
it? The welfare check.
They reported back that she appeared fine. I said, Was she alone?" And they said, "No." I was like, "Oh, well."
Was she still on post?
Mhm. Not
So
as president, but in the president's office. I don't know what her exact post is.
yeah, but her name's Susan Watson. So far as
Mhm,
you know, she's still, because this was just a couple months ago, she is
mhm,
still actively working in the
mhm.
president office of Celebrity
Could be
Center.
like I don't know if there's such a thing as assistant president or d
Yeah.
who knows, whatever, but as
Do you
far
know
as I know,
who you requested that you were the one requesting the wellness check?
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, oh, no, was she informed?
Mhm.
No. I asked them not to because I wanted to preserve what little shred of possibility of communication with her that I had left.
Yeah, because that you know of, you've not been declared a suppressive person that you know
No,
of.
they don't tell you anymore,
Yeah. They can't.
which is so it's ridiculous. Like, just tell me. I'm pretty darn sure.
They'll
And
tell somebody
I've
around
reached a point
you.
now where I don't care.
Yeah.
It's gonna be sad. I've already lost a few friends that have literally told me via email or text, like, "Oh gosh, I'll miss you, but I can't talk to you anymore." And that hurts. That
Mm.
part sucks.
Yeah.
But it's part of the journey. Like, what else am I gonna do?
Yeah. No, I hear that.
Mhm.
I wanted to thank Terry Berry. Thank you for becoming a member of the channel. Hip, hip, hooray to you. I appreciate that. Hold on, there's a couple questions I think here in comments. Tamber June says Celebrity Center is where I was introduced to Scientology through acting classes. And I saw a young girl who didn't want to be there with her mom writing her overts and withholds. I was just so sad for her. Yes,
That sounds about right. Oh my
it really
goodness.
does.
Yep.
Professor Furberger says, "Thank you, Julie, for sharing your experience on leaving gives hope to those still in, but who are so unhappy."
You're welcome.
That's the
Thanks
truth.
for listening.
A great question from Nisa. How did you transition from Scientology to the outside world?
Um, well, because I had been working outside of Scientology for quite a while, I had this like what I
Yeah, and you
call
lived
like
in
my
your own home and all of that.
Hmm?
And you lived in your own home, like,
Yes, yes,
lived
yes.
outside
But
of Scientology.
but the thing is that I had to drop a facade that I had
Yes.
and
Yeah.
also a judgment factor that I had.
Mm.
Judgment is a big deal, and to me, it's a big deal in Scientology. When you
Yeah.
learn about, you think you're smarter than anybody else, you have the insights to everything,
Oh, exactly.
then you become very judgmental.
Yeah. You
I
know
did.
better.
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally. So it's becoming humble,
Mm.
willing to learn again, but in a new way,
Yeah.
and dropping that fake, stupid, like life is great all the time attitude because it's not always great. Sometimes you got to deal with stuff.
Yeah.
And I had to become human.
Yeah.
That was like part of it's going to sound so gross, but part of like one of my worst days was like, I'm just a human being.
Yeah.
I'm not some like amazing, spaceoid freak, awesome person. I'm just a human being. So
And I'm
it's
not responsible for the entire planet.
don't even get me. But that's right. It's like you have to drop that whole like holier than thou baloney and
Exactly.
just be
I'm not
human.
saving the world. Who am I?
Right.
It's so It's so funny to me now because I
Yeah.
have gone so extreme in the other direction, especially this year after
Yeah.
going through just all the loss I've gone through.
Yes.
I'm like, you know what? I am okay just thinking about me. I'm not trying to like save a planet and,
Right.
trying to do some good work. But like that bar is, I've just been on a mission to lower it. So I can clear it and be like, yes, I did it. But no
Absolutely.
more feeling I need to, I'm not the one who is in charge of anything happening outside of myself. And that is such a hurdle to overcome, I think, for
I
many
understand.
former Scientologists, especially in the Sea Org, because you're so drilled into what you do or what you don't do could mean
Mhm.
the end of civilization. You're kept
Yeah.
in
Like
such
literally.
fight or flight. Exactly.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a very good point that you bring up.
George Massey says this is such a great complimentary interview to the interview with Deanna yesterday. To hear from an OG and then a recent ex-Scientologist, it gives the whole picture. Thank you,
Awesome.
George. Appreciate that. Let's see. Greggy Metalhead says, I really appreciate you telling your story, Julie. I'm always blown away by how brave and strong people like you and Natalie are who are speaking out. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's so kind, Greggy.
Yeah,
And
that's
Kraken Studio says, regarding the campfire in Paradise, was Scientology deployed there? So the volunteer ministers, when there was the big
oh
fire,
yeah.
we know people who died and have family who lost everything. The thought of ministers sent for photo ops makes me nauseous.
Oh yeah. It was I'm sorry to hear that. That's terrible. And of course I know that people get harmed by all kinds of tragedies like that.
Yeah.
What I did find is that, and I'm kind of in a strange way, I'm happy to say this, our credibility depends on the community,
Hmm.
but our credibility is going down the tubes. And so they're like, "Oh, you're with the Church of Scientology? Mm, thanks, no thanks." So that part is good.
Yeah.
But yes, it is true. It's a waste of resources and a waste of people's times to not invest in the right way to help.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Becky says, I would imagine it's like living in a pressure cooker. I just realized that my shoulders are tense and I'm just listening.
Yep.
Yes. LVP says, great interview, especially knowing that Julie never got sucked into the Sea Org. It almost seems like if there never was a Sea Org or David Miscavige, and Cult of Scientology would have likely just limped along forever. It could be. It could be.
Yeah, very well.
Oh, I love this. Game time, Brian. I'm listening on my mail route. Keep the content coming, Natalie.
Aw,
I love that. I
that's
am a huge fan of postal workers. I think
awesome. Me
I
too.
feel like they bring the magic. I have had so many postal workers in my life go above and beyond, like know that I moved a little ways away and they knew it. So they brought my package. That happened the other day. Um, just the kindness from a lot of
Yeah.
people in the postal service. And I say that too as someone who has cried multiple times at the post office since Tony died. And they're just
They're
amazing
good people.
people. Yes.
You are.
Yeah. So I got a huge soft part of my heart for US Postal Service workers. Shout out to you.
That's awesome.
Let's see. Chuck Ross does there. Oh, and hey, Chuck is Deanna's husband. Is there ever a female ex-Scientologist who wasn't SA'd? Serious question. It sounds like just part of the life in the cult. Oh my gosh, that is,
Oh,
you know what? I think, Chuck, I think it is the fate of women, and not the fate, shouldn't be our fate. It's a statistical thing with women. I mean, I think I read a recent statistic was 1 in 6 women have been SA'd or 1 in 4. It was something crazy.
mhm.
So that's in Scientology, that's out of Scientology. What Scientology adds their own twist on it too, and this is something I think is actually a misconception a lot in Scientology. a lot of the things done in Scientology that result in making people more open to abuse wasn't the idea going into it. But because there are predators and it is a cult, it often ends up being the case. And I think what Scientology adds to that equation is the way that they hide it and they lie about it. And I've said before, even with my own essay, what was worse for me is the lies they told about it, the cover up about it, and the victim shaming. And I feel like that's a very big statement, and I don't say this lightly. That was worse for me than what physically happened to me, and what physically happened to me was horrific. It was worse. I mean, maybe you have thoughts on that too. It's something I kept my secret. I kept that secret for 20 years until I was leaving Scientology, and I finally told the truth to my family. And I remember that was always the thing that would get me so upset, and still to this day is the betrayal of the lie and the victim shaming and the way I was made to keep that secret for such a long time. Because physically, it's physical, right? It's like it was a deeper betrayal for me. And I think it's because this was supposed to be my church. This was supposed to be the people that I grew up around, that I've like dedicated my life to. And I've always found that a little interesting in my head of like, how can you say that's worse than what physically happened to you? Because what happened was so bad. But I'm like, I don't know. For me, it's like, well, that's a physical thing versus they mentally and emotionally tortured me over this. And then I tortured myself for years unnecessarily because of it. What are your thoughts on that? And because there is a large instance, but I don't think it's just because people are in Scientology that so many former Scientologists have been SA'd. I think it's because we're women.
I could echo just about every thought you just said, because that reads so clear and true to me as well. Physically, it was awful, sure. But as you say, and I agree with you that unfortunately, it is a statistical thing that it happens to women.
Yeah.
Especially kind. I think it has to do a little bit with kind women or listeners, or which I try to consider myself one. People will take it. Certain people will take advantage of that.
Yes.
Think it's something else, and then pounce, which is what happened to me. But it was that betrayal from, again, like you say, my church, my group. They were like family to me, and I lived there. So to have them say, "Oh, no, 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 shut your mouth. Don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
Definitely don't tell the cops.
Mm-hmm.
We got this. We'll take care of it. Why spread the bad news to your family or to anyone else?"
Yeah, exactly.
And then let's go figure out what you did wrong to make this happen.
Even outside of Scientology, I don't think there's the degree, except maybe in another high control group or other religions sometimes. The Catholic Church has had their issues.
True.
But it's such an eye opener when you realize like this is not something that is limited. And I'm not downplaying Scientology's role in any of this. I'm just trying to make the point that I think it's a bigger problem, and I think we don't do anyone justice, and we will not change anything for victims of SA if we limit and we think this is a Scientology issue. It is part of it.
Right.
And the cover up, they make it so much more worse.
Right.
But so many people, even in our community, who've never been in Scientology but are all in on ending this cult, have had their experiences as well with SA, either as a child or as an adult, as a male, as a female. It's just, I've asked myself so many times over the years, what has to change? What are we doing wrong as a society that this is so prevalent? 1 out of 6? 1 out of 4?
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's insane. It's 2024 and these numbers don't seem to be improving. So we're not going to solve that problem today. We need to probably put a pin in it. But my point is, I think It's so much more twisted within Scientology because of the
Yes.
mental
Yes.
gymnastics and
Yes.
damage done. And I think growing up in Scientology and doing training routines, we were so indoctrinated. We were trained to compartmentalize. So of course we can compartmentalize something physical like that.
Yeah. Get your confronted. Let's go.
Traumatic.
It happened. So
Exactly.
what? Move on.
Yes, which is absolutely not a healthy point of view to take with it, but that's what we're forced into.
Yeah.
And it's interesting how even when it comes up later in Scientology, like in a session, it just still just brushed under the rug there.
Oh, totally. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
But that's a great question. Rain Virus says on being declared, if you weren't before, Julie, you will be after this interview.
I'm okay with that.
Oh, yeah, probably. If they even tell you, though, if they
No,
even.
they won't tell me. I know how it goes. I
Mhm.
had to tell another former family member, an in-law, that she was declared because I got to see her sheet of paper, the
Oh,
golden.
yeah, her goldenrod.
Oh yeah, I got to see it, and it was like, oh, by the way, don't call me anymore. This is way back.
Yeah.
I can't talk to you anymore. She's like, why? Oh, you're declared. I read your golden. But
Yeah.
so I've done that to other people, and I understand the mentality
Yeah.
of that group and those folks because I've been there.
Yeah. You've been on both sides of
Yes.
the equation.
Yes.
Kim is not a degraded being, says worldwide statistic is 1 in 3 women are essayed. I wasn't essayed in Scientology, but I was as a very small girl before Scientology.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yep. And thank you for sharing that as well, Kim. Well, Julie, I feel like I could talk to you for hours. Absolutely. I know we could. I think for sure, I'm sure we'll have you on
We'll do
again.
it again.
Absolutely. There's so many different things to talk about. And as more things come up, I would love to get your take on it too, because I think you have a unique perspective, having dodged the Sea Org for such a long time. But in some ways, it didn't even protect you from some of the more traumatic experiences in Scientology. You
No.
weren't protected from that, even though you were staying away from the Sea Org. But I so appreciate you coming forward and sharing your story. Everybody, please be sure if you're on the replay, jump in those comments. I'm going to encourage Julie to go back and read your comments too,
Mhm.
and maybe answer any questions if there are any too.
Mhm.
Be sure, if you haven't already, hit that like button on this video and hit subscribe as well. Julie, thank you, thank you, thank you. This has been very eye-opening in many ways. I really liked hearing about some of the more recent things happening, like during the pandemic days, being in LA and letting us know what that mysterious hotel is like.
Thank you so very much, Natalie. I really appreciate you letting me speak on your channel. I've been watching you for quite a while, and I hope that this helps someone or two or three or four or more.
I think
Um,
it absolutely will.
Good deal. Well, I appreciate it very much, and let's talk again.
Let's do it. Everybody, in the meantime, get out there and have an amazing cult-free day.